They called you quiet. They called you soft. They looked at your gentleness and mistook it for weakness. But what they didn't see was the war you fought inside, daily. You've walked through rooms full of noise but held storms in your chest so loud they could have drowned the world. You weren't fragile. You were holding back, holding yourself together when everything around you wanted you to fall apart. And no one noticed, because you didn't scream. You didn't collapse. You didn't beg for help. You just kept going. And they thought that meant you were fine. But you weren't. You were surviving. Barely. Quietly. Completely. And that takes strength most people will never understand. They don't see how heavy it is to smile when your heart is tired, to keep showing up when your soul is worn thin. They never thanked you for how many pieces of yourself you swallowed to keep the peace, or how often you let your own pain simmer so others could stay comfortable. Because the truth is, you weren't just surviving for you. You were carrying the weight of those around you, too. The one who listened to everyone's stories but had no one to tell your own. The one who remembered everyone's birthdays but cried alone on yours. You learned early that your pain made people uncomfortable, so you buried it. You wore armor made of politeness, wrapped wounds in silence, and called it strength. But just because you've been silent doesn't mean you haven't screamed. And just because you've been strong doesn't mean you haven't been breaking. Still, you carried on. You've been underestimated your whole life. Not because you lacked strength, but because your strength didn't look like theirs. You didn't roar, you didn't demand, you didn't crush others to feel tall. And in a world that confuses loud with powerful, they never saw you coming. But silence isn't emptiness. Stillness isn't surrender. Your power was never in volume. It was in persistence. Every time you stood back up, quietly, unapplauded, with no one watching, you were becoming something unshakable. The world likes stories with big explosions, quick wins, easy applause. But you became powerful the slow way, with every late-night breakdown followed by a morning where you still got out of bed. You became strong in kitchens and bathrooms and behind closed doors where your tears couldn't be seen but your courage still showed up. They don't give awards for that. They don't post it on timelines. But that's where the real ones are made. You weren't weak for breaking. You were brave for rebuilding. And yes, you've been misunderstood. Your silence mistaken for indifference. Your kindness mistaken for passivity. Your empathy mistaken for lack of boundaries. But don't you dare believe the lie that the world gets to define your strength. Because they never carried what you did. They never wore your skin. They never walked through your fire with no map and no exit sign. You did that. And no one clapped. And you didn't ask them to. You just kept moving forward because something inside you whispered, "This isn't how my story ends." You don't owe the world a version of you that's always okay. You don't have to pretend your wounds don't still ache. You don't have to smile when your soul feels heavy. You're allowed to be real. You're allowed to be healing. Because healing isn't a straight line. It's messy. It's quiet. It's full of days where you backslide and nights where you wonder if you're making any progress at all. But even in those moments, the ones where your heart whispers, "I can't do this anymore," you still get up, maybe slowly, maybe painfully, but you rise. That's power. Not perfection, not never falling, but choosing again and again to face the mirror and say, "I'm still here." They don't see how hard that is, to show up to your life while grief still lingers in the corners, to laugh again while knowing sorrow still sits at your table. But you do it anyway, not because it's easy, but because you know what it's like to live without light. And now that you've tasted even a sliver of it, you refuse to let go. You are not weak for feeling everything deeply. You are not weak for needing rest. You are not weak for choosing peace over approval. You are not here to be palatable. You are here to be whole. Let them call it too sensitive. Let them call it too soft. That softness is your strength. It's the reason people feel safe around you. It's the reason you haven't turned cold, even after all you've been through. You've alchemized pain into compassion, loss into wisdom, loneliness into self-trust. And maybe no one claps for that either. But the version of you that made it here, the version reading this right now, they deserve to be celebrated because this isn't just surviving anymore. This is becoming. Somewhere along the way, you were told to be smaller, quieter, more acceptable, and slowly, without even noticing, you started folding yourself into shapes that didn't fit. You softened your edges, you dimmed your light, you edited your truth so it wouldn't make others uncomfortable. You learned to read the room before you entered it. You learned to apologize for simply existing. And in doing so, you abandoned the most honest parts of yourself. The fire, the wonder, the parts that made you bold, the parts that made you you. But here's the thing. You can only bend so far before you break. And maybe you've bent enough. Maybe you've carried enough of what was never yours to hold. Maybe it's time you peeled off every expectation that was never written in your own handwriting. You weren't born to wear masks. You weren't made to live on mute. You were born to be seen, to be felt, to be known. And if you're tired, that's okay. Tired of pretending, tired of shrinking, tired of trying to earn a seat at a table that was never meant to honor your voice. You don't have to earn worthiness. You were born with it. You don't have to chase love. The right love finds you when you finally stop hiding from yourself. So no more pretending, no more performance, no more pouring yourself into molds that don't hold your truth. The world doesn't need your perfection, it needs your presence. You've walked through fire. You've cried in silence when no one even noticed you were hurting. You've picked yourself up more times than anyone will ever know. And still, you kept your heart open. Still, you chose hope, even when the world gave you every reason not to. So let me tell you now, with no hesitation, you are not a burden. You are a breakthrough. You are not too sensitive. You are tuned into life in a way most people have forgotten how to feel. You are not too much. You are a mirror to the parts of others they're not ready to face. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to stand out, like stars do. You were never here to follow the script. You were here to write your own pages in ink they told you was too bold. And now, you're finally remembering. Not just who you are, but who you were always becoming. Someone whole, someone clear, someone who carries both the scars and the light with the same sacred reverence. Someone who no longer shrinks for rooms that can't hold them. Someone who knows peace is the new success. Softness is the new strength. Silence is no longer shame. It is power and clarity and choosing your own voice over the noise of a world that never truly knew your name. But you know it now, and you're not running from it anymore.